Welcome to Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio. Big nonprofit ideas for the other 95%. I'm your aptly named host of your favorite hebdomadal podcast. Oh, I'm glad you're with me. I'd suffer with proctosigmoiditis if you inflamed me with the idea that you missed this week's show. Nonprofit software vulnerability with Log4j. Happy New Year. There's a software risk gaining attention, and there's a good chance you'll need help diagnosing and repairing it. You don't need to hoard gas, cash, and toilet paper. Just be aware and do the repair. Joshua Pesce from Round Table Technology sorts it out. On Tony's Take 2, thank you, Gene and Amy. We're sponsored by Turn 2 Communications, PR and content for nonprofits. Your story is their mission. Turn-2.co. It's a pleasure to welcome back Joshua Pesce. He has spent nearly 3 decades leading technology change for over 1,000 nonprofits. He's especially dedicated to improving cybersecurity in the nonprofit sector and works regularly with at-risk organizations to address digital security challenges. He regularly presents and teaches on topics including technology strategy, cybersecurity, project and change management. You'll find him at Joshua Pesce, and the company is Roundtable Technology. Joshua, welcome back to Nonprofit Radio.
It is an absolute pleasure to be here, Tony. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure too. And it's been the 3 years or some since 18 NTC when you were on.
Yeah, which was that that was the second to last in-person NTC. They did the 2019 one, and then it's been virtual since, yeah.
Second to last, yes. Yeah. And Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you as well. Happy holidays to you and
much.
all of your listeners as well.
Thank you. There are listeners today, not my listeners. They're ours. Share and share, that's fair.
Absolutely, yeah.
Our listeners. All right, Log4j, a potential security vulnerability that, it is a security vulnerability that nonprofits potentially have. Give us the 30,000 foot view before we dive in. What is this Log4j?
Yeah. So Log4j, first of all, on a technical level, is a Java-based, that means the programming language that it's written in is Java, and it's a logging utility that is used predominantly on servers, on what are known as Apache servers, which run just a huge amount of the things that run on the internet. And this logging utility is a little bit of code that developers use to log things that happen on the server and then generate reports or create actions to help them identify bugs or other things that would go on. So that's what Log4j is, and it's very, very widely used. And unfortunately, it was disclosed, I think around December 10th was when it became public knowledge that there's a pretty rough vulnerability in it that allows an attacker to essentially take control of a server that is running Log4j in an incredibly simple way. And the organizations like the Center for Information Security and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, they use this terminology called CVEs, which is Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, I think. I always forget what that stands for. Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, or CVE. And they have ratings of like 0 to 10 for how bad it is. So 0 is like, this not too bad. 10 is, this is Armageddon. And this is a 10. And the reason it's a 10, is twofold in the most simple way. One is that it's I'll say 3. Okay, there's 3 reasons. One is that the vulnerability is the worst thing possible, that the exploit of the vulnerability allows complete takeover of the system that is exploited. So if your server is running this Log4j utility and I can send it a single packet of data, I can take it over and now do anything I want on that system. Okay. So it's really bad. Second is that at a rough estimate, this is running on something on the order of 3 billion devices that are connected to the internet in some way. So it's running on everything.
Okay.
And the third thing is that doing the exploit is incredibly easy. So a 12-year-old can go download a little bit of code off the internet and automate it and go out and find servers that are running Log4j and take them over. So incredibly easy to exploit. And the combination of those three things is why all the security experts around the world started freaking out to varying degrees around December 10th.
Okay. And CISA calls it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
This is all very interesting. I just saw the movie Don't Look Up with Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Adams, Meryl Streep.
Someone was just telling me about this movie. I've not seen it yet, but
Joshua
I've heard
Hill.
mixed things about it. But
a comet is coming to Earth. This comet is categorized as a planet killer.
Yeah.
And the president, Meryl Streep, is not initially focused, and she, in the first meeting with the two folks who have identified this comet and its trajectory right toward Earth, she decides to sit tight and assess. And their estimate is that the comet is going to hit Earth within 6 months, and it's a planet killer. It'll make us extinct. But she takes a sit tight and assess approach.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm tempted. So I don't want to. No, but I don't want to be that lackadaisical about it. But I want to keep things in perspective too. So, but 10 out of 10, from CISA, that's significant. That obviously. So
yeah.
All right. And thank you for explaining why it's called Log4j and what a logging application is. I've sometimes looked at logs, and it's just thousands of lines of activity that could be incremental, like every couple seconds or something, depending on what the activity is that the log is logging. It means nothing to me, but to people who study
it's essentially a bit of code that runs on servers. There's a really funny XKCD cartoon I can send you if you want to include in the show notes. XKCD is a cartoon by a cartoonist named Randall Munroe, and he created this cartoon like 2 years ago that's like the entire internet infrastructure, and it's like this giant kind of house of cards thing, that everything's on top of. And then at the very bottom, there's like this one thing that's holding the whole thing up, and it's like, this is a bit of code written for free and maintained for free by some developer in a small town in Nebraska. And this was like 2 or 3 years ago that he wrote this, because he's kind of like noting how so much of the critical infrastructure of the internet are just open source free projects that people maintain in their free time. And this is almost literally that. Like, this is just a utility that someone made a long time ago that no one pays for, that's free to use, that was useful and everybody used it. And then it was like, oh, this has a vulnerability. We now have to fix it, and it's everywhere.
Send me a link to that drawing, because I know the one you're talking. I know the one you're talking about. I think I saw it on your LinkedIn.
Yes. Yeah.
But I want to include it. I'm going to put it next to your headshot.
Absolutely. Sure.
In our show notes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's time for a break. Turn to communications. Your 2022 communications plan. Lots of projects on there. Lots of writing. You can take the biggest projects off your plate and outsource them. Free up staff time to devote to the work it's not feasible to outsource. The annual report does not need to be done in-house. Just because it always has been doesn't mean it has to be. How about research reports, white papers? This stuff can be outsourced. Do you need help with your writing projects in 2022? Turn to communications. Your story is their mission. turn-2.co. Now back to nonprofit software vulnerability with Log4j and Joshua Pesquet. And you also said it's on 3 billion devices now, potentially. So it's not just server level, right? This could be at an individual workstation.
Yeah. And so here's where everybody's going to start panicking, right? Which is they're like, well, if there's 3 billion devices, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, we don't want panic.
Right. So people are thinking, oh gosh, I must have one of those devices or more of them in my home. And so the first thing is just, calm down, take a breath. But the most critical things are, from a prioritization standpoint, are things that accept input from the internet. Now, this might be something that non-technical people would have difficulty understanding, but the average computer that you're using or the printer in your home most likely is not accepting input from the internet, meaning someone from the internet can't just go and communicate with your printer or your coffee maker or your Amazon Alexa, right? Because it's not accepting input from the internet. The way most devices on most networks and in most homes work is it's a kind of one-way invitation traffic rule. So your computer can get data from the internet, and in that respect accepts input because the data comes in. But the only way data comes in is when you request it. So when you type google.com in your web browser, your computer is essentially making a request out to the internet and saying, I'd like this information sent to me, and then the internet sends it. But the internet can't on its own. No one out of the internet on their own can send data to your computer without you requesting it. Okay, that's most cases. Most people wouldn't know whether their network or their devices are set up to receive input from the internet or not, but mostly they wouldn't be. They would have to have done something specifically to put themselves in a state where their home devices would be accepting data from the internet. But if you have a server that you're using for any reason in your organization that accepts input from the internet, then that server if that server has this vulnerability on it, by the time you're hearing this podcast, it's probably compromised already. And the term that CISA and CIS and other security agencies use is assume compromise. And that's the stance they've had for several weeks now. We're recording this on December 28th. If you're listening to this, let's say January 15th, you have a server or more servers that are accepting input from the internet that have this vulnerability, and you've done nothing about it. At this point, you would assume compromise. And that means you need help. You need someone who knows how to go look at your server and look for indications of compromise and remediate them, meaning fix them and undo them so that your server is not compromised. You'll need help at that point.
Okay, let's start with that. First of all, thank you for being a calm voice and explaining things so you keep yourself out of jargon jail, which I appreciate. Our listeners appreciate. I hate to slap you into jargon jail. So, but
keep me honest on it, Tony. If I say stuff that's like, if I'm either being condescending or saying things that you are not, the folks aren't going to understand, call me out all the time.
I will. Well, condescending, I'll just shut off your mic and we'll just end.
Perfect.
I don't tolerate condescension. Excellent. But jargon, that's recoverable.
Okay, right. Excellent. All right.
So let's start with the case. Our listeners are small and mid-sized nonprofits. Let's start with the nonprofit that does not have a person devoted to IT, let alone a team. Or doesn't have a devoted consultant. Do they need a consultant? Can they? What should the non-IT affiliated nonprofit do?
Sure. So let's say you're, a 5 to 50 person nonprofit, maybe even up to 100 staff. Okay. And you have no dedicated IT person. Maybe you have an accidental techie. Maybe you have like a, Joe or Jane laptop that helps you out with stuff, as a consultant, or maybe you work with a small managed service provider, someone who helps you with your technology. But let's say you don't have any dedicated resource. Okay. Whether you'll need help or not depends on whether the directions that I'm going to give you now are something you could do, or you have someone in your organization who could do this.
Okay.
So what you would need to do, is I'm going to use two big words and then I'll explain them: enumerate and remediate. Okay. These are the two most important things to do in order. Enumerate, all right, or enumeration is the act of figuring out what are all the things we have that may be vulnerable to this exploit. Okay. So I'll give you just a simple example. We know And there's a link we'll give you in the resource because, again, CIS has a resource of all of the software applications, products, devices that are known to have a Log4j vulnerability in them. So let's say, for example, I'm a typical nonprofit and we have out of our 10 staff, we have 5 of them that use Tableau Desktop because we purchased it from TechSoup and we use Tableau to do some data visualizations. That's a really common application that lots of nonprofits would have running on their desktop. They probably aren't updating it that regularly. Could be an older version. Tableau, which is now owned by Salesforce, so it shows up under Salesforce, is listed in this directory of all the vulnerable applications. Mm-hmm. So you need to, if you know that I have Tableau, I need to go to this list. I need to search for Tableau, and then I need to follow the links to see if the versions of Tableau that I have are in fact vulnerable. And if so, what I'm supposed to do about that, which is usually going to be to run some patch that updates it. So you need to do that for everything that you have. So the enumeration part is figuring out what's all the software and devices that we have, our firewalls, our wireless access points, the operating systems that run on our computers, the software that runs in our computers. And for many organizations, you're already saying, we have no idea about any of those things. We don't have that written down anywhere. And that's a real problem. And that problem, when you go to best practices about how to govern technology, they'll say, have an inventory, have it current, have it automated. So you can just go look online and right. This is one of the reasons why that's really important. If you don't have that, this job at this time becomes extremely difficult for you. But if you don't do it, you have no idea what vulnerabilities you have. It's like not going in to get a physical in your doctor's office for 20 years. When you finally do go in, you're probably going to find a bunch of things that you maybe would have wished you found out earlier.
All right. So even before we get to remediation, enumeration sounds overwhelming. So
if that sounds overwhelming, right, then you need help. If you have your accidental techie in your organization, you play them that part of this interview and you ask them, could you do that? Apologize for sirens coming by. I don't know how I
thought it was incoming missiles. It sounded
yeah. Sorry about that. Right. But if that person listens to it and says, yes, I can do that. Give me a day or two. I'm pretty sure I can do that. Hey, then you can do it. If you have them listen to that and they're like, I absolutely can't do that. That sounds totally, then you need help.
Okay. Let's go to remediation then. So once you've found out where your potential vulnerabilities are, you need to do this patching, it sounds like, in most cases.
Exactly. So we're saying, okay, we've got 5 people running Tableau Desktop. This is the remediation that we need. This is the software that needs to be updated. This is the setting that needs to be changed. Whatever the instruction says, I need to go do it and check it off my list. So let's say we have a SonicWall firewall that's in our office network and that's still running and we still have people coming to the office. So we need that to work. I need to go to the CIS for the enumeration piece, go see if the model of SonicWall and the software version that we have on it, that's our firewall, is that listed here? If it's not, Yahtzee, we're good. I can check that off the list. If it is listed, now I need to follow the link through and see what is the remediation that I'm supposed to do to fix the vulnerability, right? The enumeration part is I now know it's vulnerable. Yeah, because it showed up on the list and I verified it's part of why this is hard for non-technical people is, SonicWall has, 100 different firewalls that are out there in the world, maybe more than that. And they're at all different software versions, right? And firmware versions. Firmware is like software that sits on a hardware device. So it's typically called firmware. All right. But it's just like software. You update it just like any other software. And so I need to both see what model of SonicWall I have, the software or firmware version that I'm running on it, verify whether that SonicWall and that software version are vulnerable. And if so, what I need to do to remediate it. And I need to do that for everything that I have. Yeah.
All right. Let's just get help. You're just going to have to, if you don't have someone devoted who can do this, like Joshua said, play it back to them. If it sounds as foreign to them as it does to me, You need help. You need help.
Yeah.
All right.
And the urgency is like, if you have, again, public internet facing stuff, if you know or think you have a server that accepts input from the internet, right? Again, if you don't understand how to even know that, then you need help. If you have no organization that can help you understand that. But if you do know that, that is by far your top priority. And again, by the time you're listening to this, if you haven't done it, assume compromise. It's not that it's too late, but you've probably been compromised already. And so the question is, what do we do from that point? And what you'd like to do is learn about it before you learn about it from a ransomware demand, right? Because what you're worried about is that compromise will eventually be exploited by what attackers are doing is exploiting systems and then putting in persistence, meaning a way for them to stay connected to the environment once this vulnerability is patched. So if they've done that, once you patch the vulnerability, it doesn't matter because their persistence is already there on the system.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the next thing they do is exploit you by doing a ransomware attack or installing crypto miner software on your server or doing any of a dozen other things to leverage the resource that they've taken over. And what you'd like to do is find out that they're there and remove them before they notify you by sending you a ransomware notice.
Okay. We need help. It's time for Tony's Take Two. Oh, thank you, Gene Takagi and Amy Sample Ward. Our contributors. You know them. I don't even have to say it, right? You know. I have to honor them. I have to give them tribute, but you don't really need me to introduce them. You know that Gene is our legal contributor and that Amy is our technology and social media contributor. You know this. And long-standing to boot. Gene has been with Nonprofit Radio and me since the first several shows. It was 2010. I kicked off the show in July 2010, and Gene was on very soon after the very first show. Early days. Amy Sample Ward joined at the 100th show. So that would have been July of 2012. 50 shows a year. I'm grateful. They take time each time they're coming on. They come up with the topics. We exchange messages about them, talk a little bit sometimes, but, they're doing the lion's share of the work. And then, of course, thinking about how best to explain it and then spending the time to explain it. All valuable for you. All great value for you. So I am grateful to them for so many years of contributing to Nonprofit Radio and helping you, listeners, our listeners. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Amy. That is Tony's Take Two. We've got barely a buttload more time for nonprofit software vulnerability with Log4j. This week is short. Less time to get aware, more time to do the repair. And I'm going to keep pushing this rhyme until I can't stand to hear it anymore. Let's continue. If you have an IT devoted team, then certainly by the time that I'm playing this, that team must know that otherwise you need to fire your team and get a new team.
If you have a cybersecurity, if you have someone who purports to be a professional information technology provider, right? Whether they are your own staff or whether they are an outsourced provider, and they haven't talked to you about Log4j and what they're doing about it, then I don't believe that they're serving you very well. I think that's fair to say. Okay. We'll leave it at that. We'll let the CEOs and executive directors deal with their CIOs and IT managers. Okay. Now I looked at the CISA. CISA again is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Correct. Just for context, that's the agency that
Christopher Krebs came out of in the Trump administration and said that 2020 presidential election was the most secure election in the nation's history. That's CISA, the cybersecurity.
Which he was summarily fired, but that's a separate.
He was. Yes, he was fired, but he said, yes. I'm trying to stay away from politics.
I'm a huge fan of his. So
okay. This is offered not for political purpose. This is offered for context.
Yeah, for context. That is CISA, and they're I believe part of Homeland Security.
Yes, they are part of the Homeland Security Agency. Yes, and they're the ones who said 10 out of 10. And in a press release, they said, "quote This vulnerability poses a severe risk." They called it a severe risk. End quote. Yep. So you can go there. You can go to CISA.gov, and they have a page called Apache Log4j Vulnerability Guidance.
Yep.
So you can search that, CISA.gov, Apache Log4j Vulnerability Guidance, without me giving you the full URL of the page. Just search that, and they have a couple of valuable links as well.
Absolutely. And we have links to all that from our website. So if you want to start at Roundtable, just go to our website, search Log4j. You'll find our blog, which we update as we have updates, and that has all the links in it as well. And that is
roundtabletechnology.com. Yep. If you want to follow Joshua, at Joshua Peskay, Peskay.
Yeah. Although you're better off following at Roundtable IT. I'm not on social as a rule. Like a little bit on LinkedIn, but I really don't touch Twitter or Facebook really ever. So Twitter, or Roundtable's Twitter, is at Roundtable IT. And that's a better place to follow. That's where you'll get updates of things. You won't get anything from following me because I don't post to Twitter hardly.
All right. I think hell with Joshua Peskay. Yeah, don't follow at Joshua Peskay. Follow at Roundtable IT. If you're following Joshua Peskay, unfollow. You're wasting. You're hurting your follower. Your follower following,
and I don't even know if I get notifications if you try to DM me or
not on.
Like that. You know, if you want to contact me, it's Joshua@roundtabletechnology.com. It's very easy. Find me that way.
All right. Don't use Twitter. You're hurting your ratios. Unfollow him if you already are.
Apologies to all you social folks. I'm just not a social guy in that regard.
No, you sound very sociable otherwise. Just not.
I really am. Yeah, in person, on Zoom, over the phone, incredibly social. Online, unfortunately, not so much.
Okay, and humble as well. Let's go to something that you have on January 27th. You have a training coming up. Tell us about that.
Oh, my gosh. We have, it's a mouthful, so I'll spit it out, the 6th annual best free 1-hour cybersecurity awareness training ever. My colleague, Destiny Bowers, who is an absolute delight and also brilliant and who I've worked with for a long time, she and I, 6 years ago, started doing awareness trainings with the goal of giving nonprofit organizations and small businesses an opportunity to get all of their staff cybersecurity awareness training at least once a year for free, in a way that would be easily accessible for them, would be fun, and would give them some incentives for their staff to attend. So not only is the training free for literally your entire organization to attend, but we offer prizes over the course of our 1-hour training. So people have an opportunity to win up to $100. We give out typically a $100 gift card, $50 gift card, $25 gift card, and then we'll give out other gift cards or prizes throughout the training. But at the end, we do a quiz that is competitive. And so if you win the quiz, you have an opportunity to win $100 in an Amazon gift card is what we typically give out. And so you can tell your staff, if you're a nonprofit leader, hey, everybody, sign up for this. It's going to be a fun training. Joshua and Destiny will try to make it entertaining, brisk, and enjoyable. And you have an opportunity to win prizes. And if you sign up with your organizational email, Tony@mynonprofit.org, then Roundtable will actually send the organization a list of everybody that attended the training from their organization. So if you have a regulatory requirement that says we have to train our staff, with awareness training once a year, this can actually satisfy that regulatory requirement. If you're in New York SHIELD law requires that you provide awareness training to your staff. So you can literally satisfy this regulatory requirement by having all of your staff attend this training, which again is free. And not only free, but you can tell your staff, hey, you can even win prizes by attending.
Right. Win big prizes, free, epic, best ever training.
Yep.
More humility from Joshua Pesquet.
Yeah. Again, the humility, best ever.
Yeah.
And we say that every year because, of course, every year is just a little bit better than the previous year. So it continues to be the best ever training until someone comes to us and says, actually the training you guys did in 2019 was better than this one. So I don't think this was the best ever, but no one has.
You would have the best. They would be saying that you were one-upped by yourself. There wouldn't be any other. I
can't conceive that there could possibly be any other training other than ourselves. I really feel like in this space of best free 1 hour cybersecurity awareness training, I feel like we are really our only competition.
All right. I hope you know what the word means. There's a nod to Princess Bride. Inconceivable that there could be another entity offering anything comparable in cybersecurity. All right. So where do we go for this damn thing? It is.
Well, I couldn't make it any easier for you.
Yes, go ahead. It's very simple. Go ahead.
Best.RTT as in Roundtable Technology .NYC as in New York City. Doesn't mean you have to be in New York City to attend. Anywhere in the world you can attend. So best.RTT.NYC. If you go to that URL, you'll go right to our registration page and send it to all your staff. Again, have all of them sign up and you can all compete together and compete for prizes, have a good time, get an awareness training. And we love doing it. It's sort of our gift to the nonprofit community to try to provide this training and make it fun and accessible for everybody. And we've had so much fun. We keep doing it year after year.
Is there a video if folks cannot attend on January 27th? If you
sign up, as with all things, then a recording will be sent to you the day after, and you can take that recording and you can add it to your learning management system if you have one to, onboard your new staff, whatever you want to do. But of course, you can't win the prizes unless you attend the live training. Right.
You have to be live. You must be present to win.
Yep.
To win the big prizes in the epic best ever cybersecurity training, you'll have to be present on January 27th, 2022 at what time?
Is 1 p.m. Eastern time. That'll be 10 a.m. Pacific time. That'll be noon Central time. And if there is anyone out there on Mountain time, I don't know where you're at in regards to daylight savings. I forget if you're on Pacific time or Central time now. So you figure that one out if you're on Mountain time. I'm sorry. I wish I knew.
People will know. People will be able to extrapolate
hopefully
from the Eastern time disclosure of 1 p.m. Eastern.
And we've even had organizations who we know nothing about, who aren't clients of ours, reach out to us and say, they found it on YouTube or whatever. And they've said, can we, use this recording for our onboarding package for our own staff, or do we need to pay you, or do you have rights or anything? And I'll answer that question now for all of your listeners, Tony. Go ahead. It's free. Take it. It's yours. So if you sign up, you don't attend live, you grab the recording, you chop it up and use it to onboard your new staff for the next year. That makes us super happy. Do it with our blessing. Don't even have to tell us thank you.
Okay. We've now spent as much time talking about the January 27th training as we have the subject of the podcast and the video, which is the Log4j vulnerability for nonprofits. He's Joshua Pesquet. Don't follow him. So I'm not going to repeat his Twitter handle, but follow Roundtable at RoundtableIT. The company is at roundtabletechnology.com. He's Joshua Pesquet. Thank you very much, Joshua.
Tony, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure as well. Thanks so much.
Next week, legal outlook for 2022 with our Gene Takagi. If you're not aware, you cannot repair. If you missed any part of this week's show, I beseech you, find it at TonyMartignetti.com. We're sponsored by Turn 2 Communications, PR and content for nonprofits. Your story is their mission. Turn-2.co. That's the end of the aware repair rhyme scheme. It's now ended. Our creative producer is Claire Meyerhoff. The show's social media is by Susan Chavez. Mark Silverman is our web guy, and this music is by Scott Stein. Thank you for that affirmation, Scotty. Be with me next week for Nonprofit Radio, big nonprofit ideas for the other 95%. Go out and be great.